Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Spartan Shadows Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and alongside with Zach and Emmett, we are here to break down the Maryland game and talk a little bit about last weekend's big win for MSU, football, of course, and then maybe give you a little bit of preview of this weekend's upcoming game against Prairie View A&M. Zach, Emmett, how you guys doing today?
Good. How are you doing, Emmett?
I'm doing pretty good. Was able to go out to Maryland to cover that game. Also, looking a little bit ahead, got my credentials approved for Boston College in 2 weeks. So, going to be excited for that. But it was a great game to attend, first off. And what did you guys think seeing it on TV?
First thing I do want to say, though, is that video you after the game and Ant doing the whole, how did I shut it off? That is one of the funniest things and one of the best things I've ever seen. So shout out to Ant. That's great that he did that.
Yeah, we appreciate Ant. For those of you who don't know, Ant Wright, he is former Michigan basketball player. We don't hold it against him too much, but he's a really connected guy with the Big Ten. He's also running the media company that helps out with Spartan Shadows, and he happens to be from the DMV area, so he met up with Emmett and assisted with camera problems. We'll go with that.
Yeah, shout out Ant. That was like 11:15, 11:30 local time.
It was
He was just like, yeah, I want to do a collab, and I was like, okay.
Yeah, it was funny you guys realizing you weren't far from each other, and it's like I think Ant's right around the corner from me, so I'll see if I can meet up with him.
Yeah.
But
He was like one
so
exit or whatever. I was like, dang.
yeah, absolutely. So well, eventful game this past weekend, that's for sure. The Spartans were quite the hefty road favor or underdog, I should say, going into Maryland. Most sports books had it around 8-9 points. Some models projected them losing by as much as 16. And they came in and was able to hit the last second field goal by Jonathan Kim to give them the 3-point win. Obviously, the highlight of the game for most people, Nick Marsh, his coming out party, catching the 70, I think 76-yard touchdown pass to tie us up late in the fourth quarter. Nick had a great game, was named Big Ten Freshman of the Week this week, so shout out to Nick. He was obviously, if we're starting my keys and takeaways, my stock up, Nick was the top of the list. He had a game that when he recruited, I thought we all thought he could have eventually. Nice to see it coming week 2 of his freshman season. So shout out to Nick. Mini Megatron here already making an impact. Shout out to Mamatron. I actually was chatting a little bit with her on Twitter very quickly this week, and it was, I think, Tuesday or so, and she's like, I still don't have a voice from how excited she was from the game. So congrats to Nick. Congrats to Mamatron. Couldn't happen to a better family, so shout out to them. Good job, Nick, on a great game. My other stock ups for the week, Jonathan Kim, Mr. Kicker consistency over there. Cool, calm, and collected, hitting the game-winning field goal. And then Aiden Childs on that in the last, really the fourth quarter. I know Aiden had some ups and downs again this week. I think overall played a lot better than he did week 1. But the last few minutes of the game in the fourth quarter, he really looked poised, and you can see why he's such a highly touted player. He's got the tools and he's got the potential. Everyone's got to keep in mind he's only 18 years old. He's still a young kid. This is his first major action. He did see some playing time last year at Oregon State, but nothing like he's getting now. So there's going to be a learning curve. I'm going to stress that every week, but Aiden looked really good, and you can see why he was chosen as a leader and a focal point of this team.
Just going to do one quick correction because it's actually Aiden Childs' birthday today, so 19 now.
Correct.
So we got
Yes,
QB1 at 19 years old, so happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Aiden.
To him. So, but yeah, you have to be really happy for this team, for Nick Marsh. Nick Marsh, like you were saying, Chris, was fantastic in this game, really showed the wide receiver that we thought that he could be, and I don't think this is going to be the last game that he's going to do this. Definitely going to be a lot more on kind of the chart that teams are going to have. So they're definitely going to be a lot more scouting against him. So maybe might not do this consistently, but he's just kind of that type of wide receiver. And Courtney Hawkins really talked about this as well, I believe, in a press conference, or like there's a quote from him that basically said that, like, hey, I played, I believe, probably almost 30 years ago. Like, now I'm trying to get players in at Michigan State to break my records, to start kind of take me down the list as well.
Yeah.
And Nick Marsh is one of those players. In this game, he had 194 yards, or 194 yards, which is second all time as a freshman behind Ricky White. So just a great game. And also, you have to feel really good for a player like Jonathan Kim. Like, he's been here at Michigan State. This is his second year. He's had some big kicks, but he's never really had an opportunity like this. And he's just been Mr. Consistent at Michigan State throughout his time. So you have to give credit and be happy for him as well, because I thought he just looked calm. He hit that field goal right down the center, and I don't know about you guys, but kind of going into that kick, I felt really confident that he was going to make it. And you just saw that everyone was celebrating him. You saw that Spartan fans were celebrating him. You know, Kim is him. Love that little, I, I don't know if you say like quote or little phrase, but he absolutely deserves it. And then, of course, Aiden Childs. Aiden Childs, while, like you were saying, Chris, was inconsistent this game, you kind of saw, again, the whole like roller coaster of like an Aiden Childs game. You saw some throws that you're like, yeah, maybe that's a missed throw. Like his first interception, even his second interception, you look at it, the guys are wide open. He just misses a throw. The first one was an overthrow. Second one, he should have went straight down the middle. He bit more towards the flag, got picked. But outside of those two throws, he did great, honestly. Like, you look at kind of, I mean, a lot of people look at like the touchdown throws or the deep throws to Nick Marsh. One throw, and Justin Thind actually kind of highlighted this early on in the fourth quarter. I believe the first play in the fourth quarter, it was almost like a 15 yard out to the opposite hash. Aiden Childs put it on an absolute rope on the opposite hash. So it just shows that, hey, you know what? This kid has NFL potential. That's an NFL throw. It's just going to take time. And he's going to have throws like he did against Maryland, where it's going to be maybe a little bit of an overthrow. But then there's also going to be throws like the touchdown where he sits in the pocket. He doesn't panic. He hits the player down the field right before he gets hit, because that's another thing that doesn't seem like Aiden Childs does a whole lot, is he doesn't panic in the pack. He just sits there, and he knows he's going to take a big hit, but he delivered a lot of throws during this game, even though he knew that you had a linebacker, a defensive line coming straight down the middle at him.
Yeah, for me, for a stock up from watching the game, both watching a replay, watching some highlights, and watching the entire thing from the press box up at Maryland. By the way, shout out to Maryland Athletics for hosting me and letting me be able to cover this, being on the field for, that quick 2-minute video for takeaways. Shout out to Maryland for that. Some of the main takeaways I had were we've talked about Nick Marsh, absolute stud. His 205 yards through 2 games as a true freshman. He's already only like 280 yards off the all-time true freshman record held by B.J. Cunningham from the 2010s. He's also within like 200 and 300 yards of the Ohio State and Michigan wide receiver records, just as a, reference point for those at home. We talked about the quarterback play with Aiden Childs. He had a couple bad interceptions, like he had Michael Masuna's wide open in the end zone, overthrew it to the guy that was beat in coverage. Then the other unsung hero, in my opinion, was the offensive line. KLA and Nate Carter both broke a run of 20-plus yards during the game. We saw KLA run out of bounds and truck a guy. Nate Carter had like a 30-yard rush in the first quarter, I believe, to set up our first touchdown. Childs' first 2 touchdown passes, he had a clean pocket and was able to sling it right into the receivers. I think it was Foster and Glover.
Yep.
For each touchdown. Yeah. Jack Velling also showed out pretty well. He went down with a small injury, but he was back within 2 snaps, I want to say.
Yeah, something like
Um,
that.
yeah, that was massive. Childs got sacked twice, I believe, or it might be updated to 3 after they moved that Childs interception into a fumble, which just happened, I believe, today.
Yeah, a couple hours ago.
Yeah, so, you know, 2, 3 sacks against an admittedly pretty good Maryland team that held UConn to 7 and made UConn commit a ton of mistakes week 1. So it was great to see. Chris Bogle got his second sack of the year early in the game. I want to say second quarter.
Yeah.
Couple negatives. I guess I can start on the negatives for us. Couple negatives I noticed with Isaiah Johnson at kick returner. He did not have a good game. He had two kick returns. Both times we got stopped inside our 15. Believe he got benched later in the game for that. He also had a formation issue at receiver that forced us to take a timeout quick in the third quarter. So a couple things to clean up, but it's week 2. I'm not overly concerned. They have a week to clean everything up. We have Prairie View A&M this week, which not overlooking opponents, but we do have that week to get better and not make these mental mistakes. Another
Yeah.
negative was 10 penalties, 100 yards. That was a little concerning to see. What did you guys have for some concerns?
Yeah, my negatives penalties was the start of it. I know you mentioned the 10 penalties. While they were cut down from Florida Atlantic, they weren't. There was also less personal fouls, so that's good. Some more of the penalties against Maryland were for less big chunk yardage and kind of, I don't know. To me, personal fouls are. I don't want to say they're inexcusable, but those are the ones that really cost your team more. Procedural penalties are, while they're frustrating too, they can be ironed out. So it's good to see less, just in general, but still a long way to go. 10 penalties is a lot in any way you want to shake it. So hopefully they will be working on that a little bit. My other negatives, I guess, if you want to call them, are stock downs. Still turnovers. I mean, I know they changed Aiden's third interception to a fumble, but that's still 3 turnovers right there. Not going to win many games in the Big Ten against the bigger teams with turnovers. And then still some inconsistency with the secondary, I think. I know we're starting to go through it injury-wise. Chance Rucker getting hurt. We'll touch more on that later, but we like to see the secondary hold up a little bit more. I know Maryland has a couple of really good receivers that it's hard to, that passing attack is good. There's not a way around that. It's hard to defend, but I still would have liked to see a little bit better showing from the secondary overall. I know you mentioned Emmett Darius Snow. I don't want to include him in the negatives per se. I did want to give him a special shout out because he was able to play the most snaps he's been able to play since 2022. He's looking like he's fully healthy for the first time in a long time. And while I think we maybe not need to expect old Darius Snow 100%, but he's somebody who can definitely make an impact in the secondary and with the linebackers a little bit too, being that kind of hybrid safety that drops into the box, or linebacker that can come out a little bit in coverage, and whatever you want to use him for, he can do it all. So shout out to D Snow for another solid game and hopefully coming back healthy and strong.
Yeah, and I think both of you kind of really addressed a lot of the kind of negatives or concerns after this game. I just kind of want to talk a little bit more about the defense. We talked a little bit about the offensive line. I thought looked pretty good good job protecting A&M Trials. Outside run, outside zone is actually pretty good for Michigan State. So would love to see Michigan State do that a little bit more. If you look at more of kind of the running game, that's been the most efficient for Michigan State over the last 2 games, or at least against Maryland, which is probably a better defensive team maybe than what FAU was. So we'd love to see a little bit more outside zone for Michigan State, kind of keep it simple. But defense, I thought overall did all right. I thought there were some things that Michigan State did that was well. I thought the defensive line played really well. That's one thing that has been kind of the biggest surprise defensively, in my opinion, and you guys probably might agree as well, is that defensive middle. That's one thing that Michigan State, even though defensively haven't been great, those defensive tackles for Michigan State for years have always been pretty good at stopping the run. Like even back to kind of like the Antonio days where maybe like the defense wasn't the best, but they were always really good at stopping the run. And Michigan State did this really well in this game. They held Roman Hemby to 37 yards rushing on 12 carries, 2.9 rushing average, only 105 yards on the ground. But that's kind of what we knew Maryland would kind of do a little bit. They, of course, offensively is more of a pass-heavy team. We were actually able to intercept Billy Edwards once. A great play by secondary. I believe Darius Snow actually impacted that a little bit as well due to coverage at the linebacker position as well. But he threw for 253. But overall, I thought secondary was all right. This kind of seems like a common theme, especially back when it was like 2021. Don't want to bring up this game, but the Purdue game. You think about the Purdue game that Michigan State loses. They give up one huge wide receiver performance, and no one else does very much of anything. That's exactly what happened in this game. Like Ty Felton was everything and that we thought that he would be. Ty Felton was the guy on this game. He had 11 receptions for 152 yards, 1 touchdown. There were several times early on in this game you could saw that Joe Rossi was trying to go man. See, like, hey, can we kind of line up with these guys? No, not really. They were, they were beat pretty bad a couple of the times. Luckily, Billy Edwards Jr. missed him, so it didn't really end up hurting him too much outside of kind of the one big touchdown drive that they had really early on in the game. That was really kind of the only time that they really went down the field and methodically scored on Michigan State. Really, kind of the only other time was when they got the interception from A&M Trials and scored in like 2 plays. But I thought the secondary outside of Ty Felton did a good job of adjusting to this Maryland passing attack. They prevented much more damage from happening. And honestly, you have to give them credit for holding this Maryland team to 27 points, because I think this Maryland team, especially at the wide receiver position, we talked about this, is electric. They're really fun, and I think a lot of that had to do with tackling. That was one of the main kind of concerns or main things going into this game for us, is that you have to be good at tackling in space, and that's exactly what Michigan State did. Now, with where the secondary is headed, especially injuries, I think, Chris, you talked a little bit about this, is that this team is starting to get injured. Those injuries are starting to pile up, and it starts in the secondary. In a quote earlier this week in a press conference, Jonathan Smith basically said that Chance Rucker is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. So that's kind of a concern there, is what is this injury going to do to the secondary that's already been kind of beat up back there? You're going to have other players step up, especially in this upcoming game against Prairie View A&M.
Yeah, to build on that, so Darius Snow wasn't a player that Chris mentioned. He was arguably the smartest player on the field, especially for our defense on Saturday. He had 2 crucial stops on screen plays for Felton that I believe both were for Felton. He stopped him after 3 and 5 yards. They could have easily been 20-yard broken, and then if we lost this game, it would have been the Ty Felton game, because Felton, like you said, 155 yards. Outside of that I do believe our secondary, which was kind of patchwork, especially with Rucker being lost for a while, Tatum already out, and Edwards going down for some time.
Majid out too.
Yeah, Majid out. Armorion still dealing with everything going on in his life. So he was not able. He was able to suit up and be with the team, and that was great for him. But I know they said they're taking it day by day, a delicate process for Armorion. Our thoughts and prayers are with him, obviously, at this time. So with him being out, and Majid and Tatum, and then losing Woods and Rucker for some time. Well, Woods just for that part of that game. I feel like we held it together pretty well. Outside of the touchdown pass to Wade, I didn't really see any obvious miscommunications. There were a couple where Felton found a hole in the defense, but it wasn't a blown coverage. I just know there was a miscommunication between the safety and Jordan Turner that allowed the Wade touchdown. So I was impressed, especially that fourth quarter, that we didn't get picked apart with injuries starting to pile up. Avion Gross, I remember, was on the field for a decent time.
Yep.
Brantley looks brand new and
Revitalized.
He did amazing. Yeah. He was the one who got the interception on that snow pick. Malik Spencer did not get booted in the first half for targeting. That was always nice. He played really well. I don't know. I'm just concerned, but I feel better considering how we played against Billy Edwards. I believe is a good quarterback. Not the best the Big Ten has to offer, but also not. I would put him probably in the top 10 for the conference. So
for sure, and he can get. One thing I just wanted to say about Billy Edwards is he can really get in rhythm, and we did get lucky early on, especially on that first drive. I know Maryland ended up scoring a touchdown on it, but there were several fades when we were trying to run up in man where he's just like, okay, if you guys are going to give me one-on-one coverage, I'm going to take it. And his receivers won a lot of the battles. He just missed by that much. So I'm glad to see some defensive adjustments made. I thought the defensive coaching staff and Joe Rossi did a really good job of that. And so hopefully moving forward, you'll see it continue to grow. I know hopefully it sounds like Edwards might be able to give it a go this week. So hopefully the secondary continues to get healthy because while this week may not be the biggest test, we have Boston College at the Red Bandanna game right around the corner. And then right after that, we go into Ohio State, Oregon, by Michigan, Iowa, all that. So the tough part of the schedule is looming large. So if that's everything, I don't think we had anything more about the Maryland game. Any last thoughts, guys, before we get into Prairie View?
Only thing I really have is Jerron Glover also went down with an injury that game. He's in the same situation as Edwards. Smith said he's hopeful that, I believe the official word was hopeful for both Edwards and Jerron Glover to play on Saturday. Christian Phillips also, that was a big injury. That was pregame news.
Yeah.
Phillips is expected out with a lower leg injury for the majority, if not the entire season. Christian posted on his Twitter that I'll be back. I believe I'll be back better than ever.
Yeah. At first, it kind of seemed like he was hoping to be back sooner than later, but then it kind of came out that it doesn't look like that's the case. So maybe he can heal up and give it a go before the end of the season, but doesn't sound like anytime soon for Big Dooley, which is a shame because he was playing pretty well. He was one of our bright spots week one, and I think provides some really good depth on that offensive line. So Big Dooley, rest up, buddy. We appreciate you. Friend of the program interview with Emmett at one point. So he good guy, and hopefully he's healing up soon. But moving forward to this week, Prairie View A&M is on the clock. FCS school, for those of you who don't know much about Prairie View, they are from the FCS. We are favored to win by a lot, even though there's not an official line. There's not going to be a whole lot to break down here. It's one of those games that you see teams kind of scheduled to help clean things up, get things right. Obviously, the team's not going to overlook them. I know it's not necessarily a game you want to just assume you're going to win, because we've seen that backfire on many teams before. But it should be a game where we should be able to work some things out that we've been having issues with. I know Emmett maybe has a little bit of something to add about that here in a minute, but I'll let him do that. Prairie View last year went 6-6 in the SWAC, the Southwestern Athletic Conference. I hope, and they did not look good at a lot of times. They did go 6-2 in conference, but they overall finished 6-6, and they lost their starting quarterback from last season, their leading rusher, their leading tackler. They do return their leading receiver, who's their probably best and only big-time target on offense, with Savage. He's number one for them. He leads the team in receiving. I forget his first name, and it's blanking, and I don't like it. Shamar Savage. I knew it was an S, and I didn't want to be wrong about it. So Shamar Savage, my apologies to Shamar, but he is a very talented player. Looking at last year's schedule, like I said, 6-6, they lost big to SMU, 69-0 actually, was the score on that. They lost to Grambling, and they lost to Houston Christian a couple times, Florida A&M. They did beat Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Alabama State, Southern University, Elkhorn State, but that's really about it. So should be an interesting matchup. I hope the offense does not play a full the starting offense, I should say, does not play a full game, is my hope. Guys, what do you have on this one?
So the main thing that stood out for me, this should be a tune-up game. For those who are wondering how an FCS team got on the schedule for us, especially with, I believe, the Big Ten has recently said that no more FCS. This is an exception due to Louisiana Lafayette having to cancel to play, I believe, Wake Forest due to Navy switching conferences or something like that. So this is a makeup game in place of Louisiana Lafayette. The team has a lot to correct, and I wouldn't be surprised to see our offensive line switching around a bit, trying to find the best possible replacement with Dooley injured. And I know Ramil and Baldwin are fighting for a tackle position, so you might see a lot more rotation there. Fincher and Brocious, I want to say, Dallas Fincher and Gavin Brocious were the two guards playing in place of Dooley on Saturday, so the offensive line is going to be a main thing I'm watching. They had another thing about Prairie View A&M. They played. Who did they lose to earlier this year? Texas Southern, correct?
Yeah, I believe so.
They lost to Texas Southern by 18 points, so a 3-possession game. And Texas Southern lost to Rice by a score of 69-7 in week 0. So, mutual opponents, we should be coming out firing on all cylinders is the hope.
Yeah, I believe Texas Southern was actually projected to be one of the worst teams in the SWAC as well. So it definitely does not bode very well for this team over at Prairie View. And but just talking a little bit more about this team offensively, defensively, starting quarterback is Cameron Peters, has 391 yards through the air, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 53% completion percentage. Not good, not very good. Kind of mobile. He does have some attempts, but not really going to blow you away right there. Like Chris was talking about, Shamar Savage is their go-to guy. 12 receptions for 238 yards, 1 touchdown on the season. No other player has more than 55 yards at all. So if you're going to focus on one guy offensively, at least receiving-wise, and that even includes tight ends, it's going to be Shamar Savage. So I'm definitely going to be kind of keen.
Yeah, double him. Triple him maybe.
Yeah, so definitely he's kind of their go-to guy. Offensively, they're pretty pass-heavy. Their leading rusher is Connor Wisham, has 98 yards on the year, so having been received up to 100 yards yet in 2 games. So definitely an offense that is very pass heavy, average 354 yards per game. Only 104 of that is through the ground. So you're talking about 250 yards through the air. So definitely a lot more pass heavy, average 23 points a game in a conference that is not going up against defenses like Michigan State. And I'm not saying Michigan State isn't some elite defense, but I would hope that Michigan State's a better defense than anything they've played this year. And then let's talk about their defense as well. They've given up 29 points per game, so I think this offense should be able to score no problems. Pass defense is solid, though. If you want to look at one kind of thing on defense that they're pretty decent at, it's 180 yards given up per game, a little bit less than that, less than 6 yards per attempt too. So it's not like they're giving up 200 plus yards through the air. Again, am I expecting Michigan State to continue the streak of 180 yards or less? No. If it gets to that point, I would be kind of surprised. Or it's one of those things where Michigan State just ran the ball down the field over and over and over, and like you had Aiden Childs and Tommy Schuster throw the ball like combined like 10, 15 times. If they want to go that route, that honestly wouldn't necessarily surprise me too much. So maybe that streak continues. But if it's less than 180 yards, I think it's probably purposely that. I don't think it's because this defense really stopped Michigan State. But if you really look at kind of the weakest part of this Prairie View A&M defense, it's their stopping the run. They give up 135 yards, over 4 yards per carry. If you're going to be able to run the ball at all this year, it's going to be in this game. If you can't run the ball against this team, if you can't get a push offensively against this team, it's going to be a long season, because this is a defense that people have been able to run the ball against. Michigan State should have no issues running the ball against this team. Just this team's young. Like, they have young linebackers. They do have a senior safety that does have 1 interception on the season in Bryce Turner. But this is something that, like, your backup should probably be in late second quarter, start at the half. Honestly, if it's anywhere close in this game, don't want to say the panic button is there, but like, this should be a game you should win like 50 to like 7. Maybe they score 7 points, 50-3. This is a game that fans should get out of there and like, okay, that was fun. Like, it wasn't competitive, but that was fun.
Hopefully, anyways. But yes, I agree. And I know MSU hasn't had the biggest history of putting teams away like that. Even FCS schools, I know Emmett and I were talking off recording about the Furman game, I believe in 2016? 2016, yeah.
Everything was going wrong.
Yeah, and so teams. It seems like MSU has a tendency to teams we should beat by a lot. We play close, and then we do end up beating teams we maybe shouldn't sometimes. So hopefully that's not the case this week. Like Zach said, hopefully getting some reps for some, at least on offense, some guys that wouldn't normally see the field. I do expect Nate and Karen Lynch-Adams to have good totals running the ball, and then maybe be out of there to give maybe a Joseph Martinez some carries. Maybe we see a Mekhi Frazier or Brandon Tullis sighting, depending on who goes and dresses. But hopefully, like we said, some backups see the field. And yes, Tommy Schuster, I'm hoping to get some action during this game as well. So I didn't really have a whole lot to really key in other than what Zach was saying. Their secondary does do a good job about keeping the receivers in front of them, not letting too much over the top. I will say they haven't really played an offense like MSU's capable of playing. Not that we've been rolling on all systems go on offense, but very often do they not necessarily see athletes like a Nick Marsh or Nate Carter, Aiden Childs, whatever, Jack Velling, tight end. So hopefully Jack Velling and the tight ends can get some rotation in as well. I'd like to see what Emmett said too, getting some different offensive line players in, trying to find that combination that's going to stick, because we're going to need it against Boston College and Ohio State. That Red Bandana game worries me quite a bit. I was more comfortable going into the BC game before they announced it was going to be the Red Bandana game, and then it's a night game, and the ball kind of got rolling for there. And for those of you who don't know what the Red Bandana Game is, I did a thing on Twitter about it. Go to my page at Hockey Newman. It's a game where they honor Wells Crothier. I always mispronounce his name, but a former BC lacrosse player and alum who lost his life on 9/11 as a New York firefighter, trying to help out there. So there's a whole thing on there I did on my Twitter. ESPN did a nice story about it that they play every year called The Man with the Red Bandana. Check all that out. It's really great. That's all I'm going to say about that. It's a cool tribute. Kind of wish I was going. I can't make it. Emmett's going to be there for me in spirit for us, hopefully with Red Bandana in tow. But it's a pretty cool thing. Perfect. So it's a pretty cool thing. So fans who aren't familiar should check it out. But yeah, Prairie View. Hopefully it's one of those get right games. We figure some stuff out. I do want to see on the defensive end. The linebacker play overall has greatly improved this year. I think we're seeing a lot of positives out of Jordan Turner and Jordan Hall and some of the other linebackers. Cal Halliday has had some ups and downs. Some of our other linebackers have had some ups and downs too. So I'd like to see some stellar play out of them. Like we said, the team doesn't necessarily do well on offense. Prairie View doesn't. So maybe conceptually we can get some good performances out of the linebackers and maybe figure some things out moving forward.
Yeah. One thing to note, if this team comes out looking flat or you see a lot of recycled plays, I would not be surprised. Because if we can run the same 5, 10, 15 plays for relative success, I don't think that Brian Lindgren and Jonathan Smith are going to want to tip their hands for any elaborate trick plays or reverses or anything along those lines. So do not be surprised if you see a very vanilla play calling, almost like a spring game of sorts. Just looking at their stats in their only season loss for Texas Southern, I pulled that up. They only had 21 rushing yards on 21 attempts against Texas Southern. Meanwhile, Texas Southern ran the ball nearly 40 times and had almost 170 yards. Yeah. So I expect to see us attack in the ground game because I would reckon our offensive line a little bit better than Texas Southern's, I hope. So, yeah, just don't be surprised to see blind play calling. Don't be, our offensive coordinator sucks, because it could be part of the plan. Because if we have any plays drawn up that could result in huge chunks against them, why not try them out against Boston College would be the logic, in my belief. Same thing with elaborate schemes. We might not see a lot of secondary improvement or play planning because we might come out in very blind coverages, just to try to avoid tipping our hand with the 5 extremely good opponents coming up.
And one thing with that too, before I let Zach finish it up there too, you may see us come out with things that we haven't been doing very well because they want to work on them and fix them, right? So if it's something we're not executing very well, there may be more rust that needs to be shaken off, and that's why you schedule games like this. So it might be plays or concepts offensively that we want to be able to do consistently, but just haven't gotten there yet. And that may take a couple of drives to iron out against a Prairie View, even though we've tried it in other games. So I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah, exactly. Things like that. So if it's a slow start to like Emmett said, it's not going to be a panic button. Should all correct itself by the end of the game. Should still win handedly. But yeah, just something to think about there too. Zach, any last thoughts on the Prairie View?
Keep it simple. Honestly, keep it simple. Keep it straightforward. Prevent, hopefully, serious injuries at that point. If you can keep it simple, don't do anything too complicated. Might not be, like you guys are saying, might not be the most fun game. Might not be the most exciting game. Might not see any trick plays. Might not see them go for it too much. But at this point, it's just like just get the win, look good on both sides of the ball, and then head into Boston College 3-0. That's the game plan. And if you're 3-0 at the start of the year going to Boston College, I think that's where every Michigan State fan wants to be at.
Absolutely.
Especially if that Boston College game goes well, you could be maybe hinting at an Ohio State game where you're ranked, possibly, if you win that game.
I was going to say, if you told me at the start of the year that we're going to be 3-0 heading into Boston College, if we can make sure to keep it on track for Prairie View A&M this week, I would say I'll take it no matter what the circumstances is.
Absolutely.
Sorry for interrupting you, Zach. You can continue. My bad.
No, you're good. That's basically all I had. What's your guys' prediction for this game?
Well, I'll start, I guess. Score-wise, I'm going to go maybe like a 38-7 type of score. I think that's about where I want to be at. And I will throw out my prediction since we seem to have been doing this lately. First touchdown for MSU, give me... It's going to be vanilla. I'm going to go Karan Lynch-Adams. I just think we're going to run the ball a lot. So I'll take him.
I'm going to predict... So the one thing to know, the average Michigan State victory against an FCS school, we're 8-0 all time. The average victory is a 42-10 win. I'm going to project a little bit better for MSU, a little bit worse for the opponent. I'm going to say 45-3. I think we can hold them to a field goal. Their kicker, I think, is 3 for 3 on the year. So I'm going to say 45-3. First touchdown scorer. I'm not going to play it safe because, why not? I'll say Nick Marsh gets his second career touchdown.
There you go.
Going kind of similar. I got 41-3. I think it's a lot of touchdowns, a couple of field goals. Like I said last week, I'm just going to keep doing this until I'm right. Jack Belling.
Jack Belling. You're going to be right one of these times.
Yeah, one last thought. So we were actually, Chris and I are mods in former Michigan State tight end Matt Seibert's stream. We were talking to him about what goes into game preparation against an FCS opponent. Obviously, you guys don't overlook them, but what was that prep like under Coach D'Antonio? And Matt shared with us, D'Antonio was always the guy preaching. Never overlook them. Always assume that they're going to be the best team you've played. And then he also shared a story of 2016, like Chris mentioned, that was the Furman game. Kind of our first sign everything was going wrong. He shared that, I believe it was either John Rushke or Riley Bola projected that MSU was going to go and not to allow Furman first down the entire game. And Matt Seibert told us that Coach D'Antonio lit into him for a little bit for a rant on don't give them bulletin board material. And you don't really see, I think Coach Smith is a lot like that because you don't see many headlines heading into this game about Michigan State player X said this. All you see is Jordan Hall said we're told not to overlook our opponent, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt hinted it was kind of an unpleasant meeting to start off the week or start off after that. So just a funny little story, but yeah, that's all we have for you guys. We appreciate you tuning in. Should be the same schedule for next week. We'll hopefully get you out an episode for recapping this game, and then get you previewing for Boston College. Not quite sure when exactly next week it's going to go out. It's going to depend on Emmett's travel schedule, all our work schedules and stuff like that. But we will get you some information out for that. And then the week after is Ohio State week, and they're going to be retiring Coach D'Antonio into the Ring of Honor at Spartan Stadium. And we might have a couple of things in store for you for that, as well as the Ohio State preview. So keep it here. We appreciate all the likes, shares, comments. If you guys could recommend us to friends, I know on Spotify and Apple they do ratings. 5-star ratings are always appreciated. YouTube shares, clicks, all that stuff. We really appreciate it. I will, as always, link all of our pages and links to our socials and everything in the descriptions, in our YouTube channel, all that stuff. We're working on getting some more stuff for that as well. So, and then hopefully Emmett will have some nice post-game reaction, maybe a couple more shorts to throw up for the game this weekend. Hopefully you guys can all attend in East Lansing. If you're there, you run into Emmett, say hi. I unfortunately won't be making it to this game. Hopefully I'll be down for one soon. If you ever see any of us out and about, say hi and say what's up to us. We'd be more than happy to. So anything else, guys, before we sign it off?
Okay.
So we did have that story on Matt Seibert. Also, I do want to share, he said all this about not overlooking an FCS opponent. Then Chris and I kind of pestered him for a score projection, and Matt projected 56-0. So, just something to keep in mind. The former Michigan State player has spoken.
Yep. And we like to joke around, but there are models out that's showing this game not being close. So I think we were a little more on the conservative side than most people. But yeah, there you have it, guys. That's our episode for the week. We appreciate you tuning in. Like I said, keep liking, sharing. Any suggestions you may have for us, shoot us an email at SpartanShadows@gmail.com. I'm sorry, SpartanShadowsPodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, that's everything. So appreciate you tuning in, and go green.
Go